Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I'll just do a quick introduction and then we'll pass it on. All right. Hey everybody. Welcome to OWASP Toronto. It's great to have you all. We have a very exciting presentation for you guys. Those of you at the back, maybe you guys want to come forward. You know, it's just communicating the whole room here. You know, we have tons of free seats here, so please, you know, come on. Thank you guys for coming out. If you haven't been here before and you're looking for the washrooms, go outside. Actually, you know what? Reach out to Jordan and he'll bring you to the washrooms because there's a bit of a complicated way to get to the washrooms. So there's that. Is anyone in the audience hiring? No, actually, I am. I work at Healthcare Ontario Pension Plan, and I'm looking for someone who's good at Azure and somebody who's good at AWS and from a security lens. And if you're that person, maybe you know both of those platforms, come talk to me and we can interview you for that. Is anybody looking for work in the audience? Oh, that's pretty good, yeah. Normally we have a bunch of people looking for work, so that's good. What else is there? Sector is coming up in October, if you haven't heard of it. Also check out Besides Toronto when that drops. Am I missing anything else? No? All right, we have a very exciting presentation here today. So with Derek, and I think that's it for me, so take it away.
Thank you, everyone. So, raise your hand if you've ever walked into a room as the expert and then suddenly found yourself feeling like the least knowledgeable person there. Yeah, me too. Well, after more than 3 decades in technology, you can probably tell I've got more salt than pepper here, I decided to take a crack at the OSCP. For those of you that don't know, it's the Offensive Security Professional Exam, pen testing exam, one of the staples when recruiters, whether they know what it is or not, actually put that on the resume when they're looking for a pen tester. However, I was not doing it to become a pen tester. I was actually doing it because I wanted to become a better defender of the organization's data that was under my care. But it was also interesting too. About a year before that, I passed the CISSP. I'll call it the old one. 6 hours long, sweat. That was a crazy experience. A story for another day. But by the time I came to the exam, I'd taken over 3,500 test questions. I had done 4 mock runs at home where I literally shut the door of my office and told my family, just open the door to shove food under it. Apart from that, I'm missing for 6 hours and took mock exams. And I was fortunate enough to be able to pass that exam. And then there was a gap. I kind of lost that momentum there. And I said, well, kind of what's next? And somebody was talking to me about the OSCP, and I kind of said what kind of work I was doing, and they said, well, maybe give that a go. Now, the thing is, it's one thing to kind of go out there and say, okay, I'm going to take a crack at this, and you have that enthusiasm and motivation, but there's a lot more to it as you'll find out. So I bought some lab time, about 3 months worth. Got started on one of the hardest technical challenges of my career. I had heard it was, this time I haven't been using the mic. Sorry. So I bought some lab time, 3 months worth, got started on one of the hardest technical challenges of my career. I heard it was tough. So I steeled myself for long nights, difficult labs, and an unforgiving exam. What I was not prepared for was that the OSCP was going to challenge my confidence, my identity, and everything that I thought I knew about learning. This is not one of those glory stories, how I passed the OSCP in one go and all the rest of it. There's lots of those online. Mine is there too. Instead, this is a story about the rewards of failing. The title of my talk, as you can see, is The Hardest System to Hack. It's actually me. So, at 50 years young, I willingly stepped into beginner's shoes after investing decades building a career in technology, more recently in cyber. The choice sounds simple in hindsight, but it wasn't simple in the moment. There's a tendency as professionals to build our identity on the pillars of capability, reliability, and speed. We become the person who figures things out, the one person that everybody turns to when something is broken. That identity is useful, gratifying even, let's be honest, until it becomes a trap. Because the moment you enter into an environment that doesn't reward your usual strengths, you're forced to confront something deeper than a skills gap. You're forced to confront your relationship with uncertainty and yourself. The OSCP challenge did not just ask whether I could learn some technical stuff, it asked whether I could tolerate not being good at something immediately. It asked whether I could remain committed when my self-image and my results were not aligned. And this is where the real learning began. I went into this thinking that the exam would be technical. And although it was a great challenge, the real challenge was really mental. My expectation was that decades of experience would make the learning path easier. The reality was the experience sometimes made it harder. Experience brings with it a way of thinking, a way of being and a way of doing that kind of guides the way we do things. But it can also bring assumptions. It can create speed, but it can also create impatience. It can give you confidence, but unchecked, it can make you overconfident. The OSCP became more than a certification journey. It became an identity test. It asked questions that many experienced professionals quietly struggle with. What happens when something that you deeply care about doesn't come easily to you? What happens when the thing that made you feel competent is not enough? That gap between expectation and reality was uncomfortable, but it was also necessary, because growth rarely arrives in a form that flatters us. It arrives in a form that can humble us. Lesson number one, attempt number one. The first failure was due to overconfidence. I want to be clear here. Overconfidence doesn't always feel like arrogance. Often it feels like efficiency. It feels like, I've done enough of this to move faster than this. It feels like I already know how to think, so I should be able to solve this quickly, right? After all, I've got all this experience. But the problem with that mindset is that it can quietly detach you from the process and processes. What you already know may not get you there. Impatience certainly will. That line, for me, captures one of the hardest truths that I learned during that journey. Because impatience skips process. Impatience tells you that speed is the same thing as progress, when in fact, speed can be a form, actually, of avoidance. I had to learn to slow down, honor the methodology, and stop assuming that intelligence, motivation, and enthusiasm were a substitution for discipline. In cyber, that's a dangerous assumption. In leadership, even more so. If confidence keeps you from being teachable, it has morphed itself into pride and pride is a liability. So the lesson here was not be less capable. The lesson was to prioritize process over pace. If you want the result, earn it through diligence. Don't outrun the lesson. Attempt number 2, lesson number 2. This was about awareness. There are rabbit holes everywhere, not just on the OSCP. But on the OSCP, there was a fair share of rabbit holes. But it wasn't simply about being distracted by rabbit holes. It was about recognizing when I was getting distracted and being honest enough to stop. This requires awareness. Curiosity is a double-edged sword. It drives discovery, but it can also drive you insane. If you're not careful, curiosity turns into tunneling. You keep digging because you've already invested time, not because the path is still the right path. That is where awareness matters. Awareness is the ability to pause before momentum leads you into self-deception. I had to learn to notice when I was heading down a rabbit hole, call it and step back. That sounds obvious. It's not obvious when you're in it. When the pressure is high, it's easy to confuse persistence with productivity. But sometimes the most disciplined thing that you can do is to stop, reset, and ask a better question. I'm talking about life too. And sometimes awareness means recognizing that the route itself needs to change. Not the goal, just the route. Just because I keep going didn't mean I had to keep going in the same direction. That was a hard lesson. Because changing direction can feel like admitting defeat, when in reality, it may be the first sign that you're finally seeing clearly. What was the lesson in attempt number 2, failure number 2, lesson number 2, pick which one? Awareness. Awareness gave me better technical judgment and better self-management. It helped me to separate effort from progress. Because you know that you can make a lot of effort, but make little progress. And the converse is also true. Awareness also helped me understand that just because I can keep going, it doesn't mean I should keep going in the direction I'm currently headed. Awareness is what turns curiosity into efficiency. Lesson, attempt, failure number 3. The third lesson was taught by that taskmaster, discipline. I've mentioned this superpower a couple of times earlier on because it really comes into its own when the route changes. Once you've stopped, reset, and chosen a different direction, discipline is what keeps you moving. This is where discipline becomes essential. Discipline is not the same as motivation. Motivation is emotional, and emotions only get you so far. Discipline is structural. Discipline is fuel. Discipline keeps you going when your get up and go has got up and gone. Discipline is about managing time. It's also about managing self. It's about protecting your focus, controlling your impulses, and continuing to work methodically when the excitement has faded away. Methodology keeps you grounded. Discipline gives you that momentum, and disciplined momentum beats your intensity over time. Lesson number 3 was hard for me to learn because intensity feels productive. It feels impressive. It feels like you're pushing hard. But intensity without discipline just fizzles out and leaves you like a can of pop that's been left open for days, flat. Discipline is quieter. Discipline is humbling. But the compounding power of discipline is huge. This lesson is not about dramatic effort. It's about sustainable effort. It's about showing up, staying methodical, and continuing to work even after the novelty has worn off. Because once awareness has shown you the right direction, it's discipline that's going to carry you forward. Nonetheless, lesson, attempt, failure, number 4. Perspective. This is one that reached beyond the exam and prodded my identity. Repeated failure does something to you. It forces questions you don't really like to ask. Am I still good at this? Am I too old or too young for this? Am I pretending I belong here? Anybody here suffer from imposter syndrome? What if I finally found something that I'm not good enough to do? Do I even want this? These questions require honesty and perspective. These questions are painful because they're not really about the certification or the thing that you're writing for. They're about self-worth. They're about the stories we tell ourselves when performance does not match our expectations. And unmet expectations can lead to frustration. What I had to learn was that while a measure of self-worth may be found in performance, it is unearthed through resilience. And resilience is empowered by perspective. Failure is actually feedback. Look at that from a perspective point of view. It's not a verdict. Failure is information. It does not and should not define you as a person. Our identity must be rooted in something bigger than an exam, something bigger than a title, something bigger than one result, good or bad. If your sense of self collapses every time you fail, then success, or whatever you deem it to be for you, is carrying way too much weight. And eventually that weight will become unsustainable. I know because I've made that mistake. And it almost caused me to give up. Perspective helps me to see that the struggle was not evidence that I didn't belong. It was evidence that I was actually where I needed to be. Learning something new. And learning something new is uncomfortable and it's hard. Remember when we were learning to walk, or ride a bike, or drive a car? It was uncomfortable, right? New learning demands that you tolerate that gap between who you are today and who you are becoming. Well, thanks for hanging with me through these 4 attempts, lessons, failures. We are now into the final stretch. Attempt number 5. Lesson number 5. I will actually refuse to call it failure number 5 here. This is the one that ties it all together. Passing the OSCP, there you go. Passing the OSCP mattered. Of course it did. I wouldn't minimize that. Certification changed my resume. It changed how I was perceived. It gave a visible marker to a long and difficult effort. Passing did matter. But the truth is that passing was not the deep reward. The preceding failures taught me lessons that changed my life for the better. By the time I passed, I'd experienced 4, let's call them learning experiences. Each one of them forced me to confront something I did not want to admit. The possibility that I might not be able to brute force my way through this one, that I might have to become more patient, more humble, more disciplined, and more resilient than I'd ever needed to be before. And that's what process gave me. Yes, I gained technical knowledge, and yes, I got a cert, but the real reward was strengthened resilience. Resilience is necessary in cybersecurity and in life. Why? Because resilience is what keeps you in the game long enough to see growth, to watch it happen. It empowers you to return after disappointment without becoming smaller. It's what keeps you going when your ego says, tap out. A few things that the journey of the OSCP taught me about leadership and mentorship. First, coach the person, not the problem. When someone's struggling, the visible issue is rarely the whole thing. There's often fear, pressure, shame, fatigue, or self-doubt underneath. If you only address the surface, you'll invariably be putting band-aids on the wrong wound. Secondly, normalize struggle. We are susceptible to the lie that difficulty means arrested development, that we're behind, that we need to catch up with somebody else. And typically when we're thinking that way, we're comparing ourselves with somebody else. But why would we do that? The only person we should be comparing ourselves with is who we were yesterday. Difficulty doesn't mean you're behind. Difficulty means that you're navigating the choppy waters of real growth. As leaders and aspiring leaders, it's important that we create environments where struggle is seen and heard, not hidden or shamed. And remember to reward learning, not just outcomes. There's a tendency, fueled by social media mainly, to only publicize our wins while hiding the messy middle. Instead, we're encouraged to optimize appearing competent fast instead of becoming incrementally capable, strong, and resilient. My advice? Stop hiding your messy middle from your team, from whoever. Let them connect with you through the reality of failure. Lastly, build teams that recover faster. Recovery speed is a leadership capability. I'm not telling that in an interview. In security, in business, in life, the people who endure are often not the ones who never get knocked down. It's the ones that get up with less delay, less ego, and more clarity. The OSCP journey taught me that authentic leadership matters because people buy us before they buy what we're selling. As leaders and aspiring leaders, we must make room for that. We must tell people the truth about effort, about struggle, and about what it means to keep going. Being authentically you builds a strong, resilient team. Be present, be vulnerable, be you. And remember, right now, you may be an expert, but you didn't start as one. In closing, this is really the heart of it. Not that I passed, not that I failed 4 times, not even that I kept going, although I did. The heart of it is that the real barrier was not technical, it was internal. It was the box that I built around my identity. The box was made of pride, expectation, comparison, and the belief that because I'd already come so far, I shouldn't have to become a beginner again. But that box was broken, and I'm glad it was. So everyone, here's my call to action. Whatever feels out of reach right now, do not write it off too early. Don't assume that distance means impossibility. If you've lost sight of your goal, pause, change your view. Leverage resilience when that path gets longer than you expected. Leverage determination when the results are slower than you expected. Leverage humility when the lesson arrives in a form that bruises your ego and causes you to rethink the direction in which you're going. And leverage the village, because we are stronger together. There are people around you who can help you keep going. Mentors, peers, family, friends, colleagues, communities. Let them in. Let them strengthen you. Let them remind you who you are when your confidence is fading. The thing you think is out of reach may not be out of reach at all. It may simply be waiting for a version of you that is stronger, humbler, and more willing to continue than the one who first reached through. So there you have it. I showed up to hack systems and found that the hardest system was me. Thanks.
Are there any questions or comments? Anyone in the audience looking to get their OSCP? No? Oh, yeah.
I'm studying for that and serious.
Okay. Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Just busy.
No, absolutely. I think one thing that maybe wasn't touched on is like what the OSCP is. Do you guys all know what that is? Yeah, to those of you who don't know, it's like essentially a 24-hour exam where you have to hack like 3.5 out of 5 machines. And it can get very grueling. I also did the OSCP, and it's very, you get in your head very easily about things. Like you're staring at the solution to your problem, but because it's been, 15 hours of hacking things, that you don't see it, So I can totally, relate to a lot of the things that you mentioned here. So I think it was great. But any questions? Yeah.
So listening to the 6 hours or 24 hours of this hackathon that you're doing, it sounds like it was mentally grueling and time consuming. How did you manage to balance mental sanity while doing this? What did you do that kept you going and you felt like you wanted to give up?
I think it was just a part of it was sunk cost because it's not free. It can be quite expensive, and also I refused to believe that I couldn't do it. So that was a driving factor. And then as the village, like my family. As I said, obviously I'm not intended, I won't be breaking any rules and regulations from OffSec in terms of, the things that I did. But certain things I had to do was to, as the gentleman said here, sometimes in regards to what you said, I had to walk away. There was and the clock is still ticking. Right, that clock is still going. I can't just stop it to say, "Oh, I'm going to the washroom," and then and then the clock is going to start again when I get back. That clock is going regardless. So you're in there, and you're focused, and you've got your methodology. The first time I just wanted to crack it, I didn't go too well. 3 cans of Red Bull. Don't do that. Don't do that. I was so wide, it's ridiculous. And it actually had the opposite effect. I just could not concentrate because I was just going. But when I hit the rabbit hole, which I actually did a few times, different attempts, a friend said to me, "Just get out of the house." I said, what? But the clock's still ticking. I said, no, get out the house. Because the time I took the exam, it was still daylight, it was safe and everything. He said, go for a walk. Walk around the block. I don't want you to take anything, don't take anything with you, just your phones, and we can reach you. You haven't jumped off a bridge or something in the exam. Just go for a walk and come back. That was amazing. That 45-minute walk that I took, it literally rebooted my brain. And it caused me to reassess what I was actually doing. It caused me to change route. So that's one of the things that I did. Sleep, I tried various things. Your sleep cycle, if you know typically what your sleep cycle is when you feel at your best, kind of go along that. I haven't, to be honest, I kind of fallen out of touch with my sleep cycle with the work I was doing. And so I started the exam at sometimes crazy times, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. And I settled on a time in the end, and that made it kind of helpful, because once you're following your cycle. And also just be prepared, as I said, to change route. I had a plan for my final attempt that I was gonna attempt X, Y, Z between this time and this time, ABC between this time and this time, and DEF between this time and this time. And I actually put in place 6 hours sleep. Now that sounds crazy when it's a 24-hour exam, do the math, right? How much time I was taken away for sleep. That was the plan. I actually found that I suddenly got close to something, and I was ultra confident. Unfortunately, it was the right move. But I actually only had 3 hours of sleep on the last attempt. It's really just to say that there's various ways. You've got to kind of find what works for you. But I think one of the most powerful things is literally, whatever that means to you, it might be walking around the block. It might be going to pick up your Nintendo Switch or PS5 and playing a game or two for a few minutes or whatever, right? You might be listening to your favorite playlist. You might be talking to a relative. Actually, for my 4th and 5th attempt, because you're actually on camera, and I checked with the proctor, my wife was actually with me for 12 hours twice. Sometimes just that alone. Do it as long as it is accepted and legal with the proctor. Do what you need to do. The clock is going to tick anyway. If you need the sleep, hell, get the sleep. If you need to walk around the block, walk around the block. If you would prefer to go and play Call of Duty for an hour, it's your business. It's your 24 hours. But whatever helps you to reboot and get back in.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the other thing is that when you're done the 24 hours, you're not actually done. You have to write a report and submit that. And honestly, I felt like I didn't sleep at all after that 24 hours. I basically just wrote the report, and I tried to sleep a little bit so I could have some some sleep when I reread the report to make sure it made grammatical sense. But it's pretty grueling. So, but I think it is a great opportunity to demonstrate your skills. It is practical. It's still like the benchmark to getting hired as a pen tester. So did you get hired as a pen tester?
Not as a pen tester. I actually lead the cybersecurity team, and I built a program somewhere else as well. So I kind of moved in that direction.
Okay.
But literally, it was just, I wanted to know what the bad folks were doing, so that I kind of had that mindset to help me to be a better defender.
Yeah.
So it's kind of counterintuitive. For people like, why did you go for this hell and you weren't even going for a job as a pen tester? But it did help me to reach the goal that I had in mind, which was to be, I hope, a better defender.
That's great. That's great. Question? Oh, there's a microphone behind.
So you say you did 5 attempts. Would you have stopped at which attempt?
Well, I stopped at 2.
Yeah, no, would you have stopped if you hadn't passed the 5th attempt, or did you have a number of attempts in mind?
I didn't have a number of attempts in mind. I just needed to pass. So there was one attempt where I actually got a flat 0. So just to be clear, taking 5 attempts doesn't mean you're getting the same 5 systems, right? So this isn't one of these easy things where you just go and redo what you did before and everything's going to be fine, because it might not be exactly, and that's one of the rabbit holes. You may see something that looks like something, but the next time around it's not really the same. So, but really, in answer to your question, no, I didn't have a number in mind. When I got, I think it was a third attempt, when I got a flat 0. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, I literally got a flat 0. I just went down. I thought I had certain things in place, and I went down different route. And I really, to be honest, there may have been some mental stuff going on there, and I really I wasn't taking notice of certain things. And then by the time I got my act together, I didn't have enough time to complete. So, yeah. No number, just needed to pass. Especially when, in our house anyway, it's a shared budget. This wasn't coming. Yeah, those of you who are married or partly, we don't have separate budgets except for surprises in our marriage. So the money was coming out of a central pot. And I didn't really want to go to my wife for she was very supportive, as you can see, fun tense. But there was part of that as well. I thought, money's, at least I'm not at that stage yet where money's can be thrown away. So really, a part of that as well was saying that, this investment is being made into me, right? And not just in terms of money, actually. And imagine the time taken away from my family. I have four grandchildren, but we're still very close. The time that I took away from them, the time that I took away from my wife as well, while I was doing this, right? And I'm so sorry, I forgot. Adam, as Adam has said, it really comes out to about 48-hour exam, and all the prep that you do before then. And I did that 5 times. I did have the person who remained nameless, what they got a handle anyway. But somebody, I was talking about it online, and at the time, I said, "Isn't that really, dude? Maybe you're just not cut out for this." This is why I say this is mental. It's really not just technical. Yeah, the individuals said, "Don't you get it? You can't do this. Give it up." Well, there's the receipt.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably like a completely outsider question. Like at what point did you, in your career, did you decide to pursue this like certificate? And obviously you shouldn't be comparing yourself to other people, blah blah. But you did this 5 times, so you what kind of, do you want to talk about what type of career paths people typically are looking to get into, and coming from a software background here?
Well, fun fact, my first job was in HR. I actually qualified as an HR generalist. I was meant to take it over. You find very many passes. Typically, people will say it's comp sci, but you'll be surprised. If you can still find it, there's a podcast online called Humans of InfoSec, and by Caroline Wong, who's a dear friend of mine. You will hear some interesting stories about where people start from to get into cyber. For me, it actually started off with HR. I think I'm going to crunch like 3 decades here. Started off in HR. HR gave me access, gave me exposure and access to IT systems. I got interested in IT systems more than I got interested in HR. So eventually I moved into IT. Started off in help desk. Then curiosity really worked for me, because I was like, well, okay, there's this application, but how does this connect to this? Why does this do that? Why did this not work? So from help desk, it went to networking. It's actually expired now, but I had the Cisco CCNP. I did that. That was a journey too, but it was really interesting. I was already working as a Cisco network engineer. That didn't necessarily make it easier, it just helped a little bit. But I did that. And I was working as a Cisco network engineer when I actually immigrated to Canada. But I couldn't actually find a role at that time actually doing network engineering, not at that stage. I actually eventually moved into data backup. Where is this going? Data backup. But while I was doing data backup, and this was for a company that was formerly, well, when I joined, it was called EMC, so that dates me. They then became EMC Dell, and then became Dell. When I started there, I was actually working in a data backup support team, providing premier support to sort of high value customers or whatever. While I was doing that, I got exposure to an email security application that was blowing up at the time for the organization, but they didn't have enough people. So then I moved into that. And then I moved into consulting for that solution. Then I had an opportunity during that time working with different banks, email security, email archiving, privacy, that kind of stuff. Then I got the opportunity to build a cybersecurity program for a public safety regulator. And now I'm doing the same, be coming up to 5 years now, a private equity firm just down the road building the program. That's my journey, but there's many ways that you could go. I don't know if that helps. If it doesn't, I'm happy to.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
I think listening to you speak, you clearly have a positive outlook on failure. Did you have that throughout this entire process? Like this, you kind of failed the first and a few times, or is this kind of something that you realized in hindsight?
It's something that grew on me. Because something that hits you like this, 24 hours, and as Adam said, you've then got to write a report after that. So your brain's already fried after packing these boxes for nearly 24 hours, and now you've got a context switch and write that all down. And it's not, and they don't just accept any report. There's a standard to it. So I could have all the details, but if it's not in a professional format, which I learned along the way by OSCP and other things, it's not. You can still fail actually, even if you hacked your requisite amount of boxes. The report could fail. Anyway, no, I didn't. It grew on me over time. It really took, and there were times, and this is about transparency. I had a full meltdown after one of the attempts. Actually, two. One when I got 0, and one when I was, without giving away details, I was extremely close. And I actually didn't know till afterwards, because obviously it's open bookish.
Yeah.
You've got your notes there. And it's something that I misread. And if I read it properly, what I was doing in my notes, I would have passed. So what's worse, to get 0 or to be so close you can taste it?
One more question for you. How did you celebrate?
Slept. No, after that, my wife took me out to a pretty serious dinner, and then there was some sleeping. It's pretty anticlimactic. It's climactic in the moment, but then when you finally, and it's not immediate. It's not like some technical exams that you take where you click. You've probably done other exams where you click and you get the result kind of there, right? You've got to wait for them to read your report, assess it, make a judgment. and then you're waiting for an email. If it's still the same way, you're waiting for an email. It didn't come that day. But when it finally came, I nearly fainted. That's actually done it, and my children were very, very, very happy because they saw me at my lowest. Because this is the thing I was saying about not being afraid to surface failure and struggle. Right? My children saw me when I literally had a meltdown. Like I'm done. I'm fully done. It was actually my eldest son that said to me, "Dad, you can do it. You just need to chill, give yourself a moment, think about this." And honestly, it was my village. It was my village that helped me to go back again. In fact, at one point, just based on my, is it really disposable income these days? I actually tapped out financially in terms of what was available at that time, and I had to do something. That's happy to give my blog for that afterwards. But I tapped out financially at one point, and it was really a question of, do I really want to do this? Or am I just going to say, you know what, I've run out of money, run out of energy, run out of motivation. These are the things I touched on during the talk. Where am I going to continue? Thanks to the village, I actually got funded for my next attempt. And when I'm in the village, I'm in the cybersecurity community. Many of whom I didn't even know. I took a chance. And there were certain people that stepped up, everything from my parents to complete strangers that I haven't met yet, actually, that actually said, here's 500, here's 200, here's $1,000, and help fund that attempt. Now, bear in mind, that was the one where I was that close. By that time, circumstances had changed, and there was I had some funding, and then I was able to go for that 5th attempt. Village.
So you covered pretty much the pre-exam your career, and then during the exam, all the struggles and financial stuff, right? So once you got the certificates from CISSP and OSCP, how did they help your career to
I think for me, especially the CISSP. So I've spoken about why I took the OSCP. The CISSP for me was extremely important to me. I didn't just want to have a cert. The thing I loved about the CISSP was that it made you part of a professional organization, right? It's good to be, it's definitely good to have a cert, be a part of a group, but there was something about being a member of ISC2, where I was held to a standard of ethics, where there's a community of professionals that if I misstepped, right, there were consequences, not just in terms of potentially losing membership, but that reputational damage that can come from that. So for me, a lot of it was around just being a member of a group of professionals, being able to lead into that group. And then in terms of my career, yes, it did help. When I was looking for certain roles, I would filter out for that. If that certification was there. But it also helped me to have a way of approaching my work as well, right? Instead of kind of being, I'll try this and let me see if that works. And there's a little bit of that, right? Because there's times when what you've learned doesn't necessarily line up with what's in front of you, right? But yeah, I did find it. I can, for me, say that it was beneficial for me and it still is very beneficial. Sometimes actually at work, if I come across something that it's really got me stumped, I'll reach out to that village, and the IC2 community is actually is part of that. And I say obviously, and if it's not obvious, please note, I anonymize the question that I'm asking. There are certain details that are just missing. And I anonymize the query and say where I'm stumbling and ask other people what their experience is in terms of result and what they did to resolve that issue or any thoughts on it. Just really because that community has, people that work in military, people that work in education, people that work in healthcare, people that work in government, people that work in startups. It's a wide variety of security professionals that have different perspectives. So that's one of, to me, that's still one of the greatest benefits.
Nice. Is there any last questions here? No? Okay, cool. Are we still going to the bar afterwards? Is that? Oh. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so typically after orals, if this is your first time coming here, we go to the bar afterwards, just kind of like hang out and talk shop. So yeah, we'll be heading across the road here to the what is that, Boston Pizza, something like that. Yeah, the other thing that I want to add is that the OSCP is incredibly, it's a very great service. Like I hope this didn't scare anybody off. Like I think it is a very valuable service. Yeah, thank you so much for the talk. Thank you all for coming, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the future. Yeah, I guess now we'll just kind of tidy up and then head over to the bar.